The Cavs can't quite get it done in Houston as Darius Garland misses a couple clutch free throws. Spence and I here to talk you off the ledge, though. We'll do it next on the latest episode of Courtside with the Cavs on SI podcast. Welcome on in to the latest episode of Courtside with the Cavs on SI podcast, part of the Cleveland Cavaliers on SI. Spencer German, Spencer Davies alongside with you with plenty to talk about after a brutal loss in Houston. I think is a good way to put it. It was a little frustrating to see it come down to the wire like that, and the Cavs couldn't quite pull it out. And I know that the results have caused quite the controversy, Spence, among Cavs fans, particularly over Darius Garland, because he missed he had the chance there at the end. We know how it kind of played out, but he got fouled on the three, goes to the line. It was a flagrant, so the Cavs are going to get the ball as well. Goes to the line, misses the first one. Best you can do is a tie. Misses the second one, makes the third one. You get the ball back, and they can't quite get a shot up to fall to win the game. And so the Cavs fall 109-108. And it's not that I'm surprised by the reaction, because it's how it works in the NBA, and part of it is like you do enjoy like the game to game discourse on different things, and that's what makes the season sort of fun. But at the same time, like Darius Garland has been one of the most clutch players in the NBA this season. If you look up his clutch time stats, and yeah, he's a 90% free throw shooter. You got to make the free throws. I get it, but like I don't think this is the end of the world. In a regular season game, he makes this mistake. I don't think this is now like sky is falling, put him back on the trade block like everyone was ready to do last year. Like that, it just seems a little excessive to me.
You have kind of the two sides of the argument, right? Like you're watching as a fan, you see a guy who is a 90% free throw shooter, who is a clutch player and has been all season long, and comes up short in the situation to where the Cavs were completing a comeback. They had taken a 6-point lead, and then Fred VanVleet knocks down some shots. Alperen Şengün clearing out with his elbows on a number of possessions that didn't get called. There were a lot of mixing of emotions last night, I think, from Cavs fan sides, which I'm trying to quell that a little bit, because saying that DG has been anything but clutch this year is just disingenuous.
Agreed.
He's a 90% free throw shooter who just couldn't get two to go down. And what's even crazier about this, honestly, is if you look at DG's free throws at the line, it's not like they missed back iron. It's not like they were short. They were in the middle of the cylinder, and both of them just curled up on and out twice. So that's just bad luck.
I'm just going to blame the rims. Was that a double rim that they were playing with in Houston? Come on.
A double rim. Throwing it back, Spence. Throwing it back to the playground.
Back to the playground days. Exactly.
I love it. But, DG's not even, the Cavs, I should say, are not even in that position if DG doesn't do what he did towards the end of that game, making shots, penetrating, floaters. And this is another thing, too, I think we have to bring up, is that Donovan Mitchell, shot selection wasn't great down the stretch. I think just missing shots, too, close to the rim and in that restricted area. And even if you look at the three-pointer he took when they tried to tie it up or take the lead with like 22 seconds left, I thought that was rushed. And he was the one who had the last shot, too, after DG made the 1 out of 3 free throws. It was in the corner. Donovan tried this turnaround three that wasn't even close. So I think that the backcourt in general has to take this one on the chin. And just listening to these guys after the game last night, and I was working the game, so just got to hear the press conferences from afar. Kenny Atkinson was nothing but positive. There was nothing that these guys had said negatively about this. They were happy with how they played, the way that they were able to cut into Houston's lead, take the lead, and obviously in the second half respond by rebounding better and playing better defense. Dude, they held the Rockets to 15 points in the fourth quarter. and 48 points in the second half. They did a hell of a job defensively. And a lot of that had to do with the zone that Kenny went to that we've talked about multiple times when things aren't going right in man-to-man. So this is just kind of one of those where you throw your hands up in the air. Darius missed 5 free throws yesterday. He's never done that in his career. Yeah. So, like, that is just kind of an anecdotal thing that people are going to kind of lean towards. But again, I get the emotion after watching that game last night, seeing how highly competitive it was, and you're not going to turn it into something that it's not. That's how I see it.
Listen, Cavs fans have a right to feel how they want to feel. I know Darius Garland's kind of been a touchy subject for this fan base, I think, over the last couple of years, because he goes from being an all-star, struggles a couple of years, the first 2 years of Donovan Mitchell, has the injury last year, which I think, like we've talked about, was maybe the biggest detriment to his season in 2023-24. And this year he's been brilliant again. So, like, it's been kind of this roller coaster ride for fans in terms of, like, what they've seen from him. But I get it. Like, part of the fun of sports is you get to react how you want to react to every single game, whether that's the NFL, whether that's the NBA, whether that's MLB, like whatever sport it is. You can react to however you want to react to any individual moment or game. Like Emmanuel Clase blows a save. He didn't do much of that last year for the Guardians, but until the playoffs. But like he blows a save in the middle of June. You have the right to freak out and say this guy just doesn't have it anymore. Like that's part of the fun of sports. But like I think the extremes that it's being taken to where, people are hitting the trade machine and they're like, oh, like what can we get for Darius Garland? Like that's where it goes too far for me. Like, okay.
I don't think I've seen any of that seriously. Like I've seen people piling on to DG, but I haven't seen things like the trade machine.
I'm being hyperbolic, but I have heard people mention like, this is why like we can't trust him and like he's just not that good. Like I have seen some of those commentary. And I just refuse to believe that. And I'm not going to go there with it because it was one game. Like you said, he's never missed 5 free throws in a game in his career. That's just not something he does. It's going to be okay. And frankly, like I'd rather he get this out of the way now in January than have it be a problem in May. You know what I'm saying? Like that's when you wanted to make those shots. So it happens. It's sports. Like you're not going to make every shot. I laughed because I was on the air when the game was going on and when that moment played out. And, it's funny, like when I watch these games with my wife, she's a Cavs fan. Her running joke is always like, if somebody does something they're not supposed to, she's like, she fires them. So, I mean, this goes back to like the LeBron days. Like if they miss a free throw, she's like, you're fired. You had one job. It's a free throw. It's free. Make it. So she likes like this running joke where she fires everybody. So I kind of said on the air, like, yeah, my wife would have fired DG tonight. That's how it would have been. But that doesn't mean like he's not back in the starting lineup the next day.
This is the other thing too, though, like that he hasn't done this in the clutch all year. You brought it up, like He's been one of the most clutch players in the league this year. Do we forget about OKC? Do we forget about the go-ahead shots that he's made? The 40-point night he had. Do we forget that he's on track to be 50-40-90? Like, come on, man. Like grow a brain, bro. Like, and I know a lot of them are trolling, but in this case. It wasn't just the faceless, nameless Twitter trolls. Like, there were people literally going at DG. And in that moment, again, you understand the emotions are going to come out. I'm sure he felt some type of way about it, too, and was probably angry with himself. But, like, Donovan is the one that came out again and said, like, I'll take him on the line 10 times out of 10, just like Kenny Atkinson would, too. A 90% free throw shooter. Like, don't make a subject something that it's not.
I think sometimes that's... Yeah, I think sometimes that's the thing that like gets lost on fans. Like nobody, like as hard as fans might be being on him, like nobody's going to be harder on themselves than DG. Like he's a professional athlete. Like he wants to make those shots. And I think people were saying like he kind of like laughed after the second one. Yeah, because I think he was just like sort of shocked. Like, man, how did I miss these two? Like it's kind of like a stunning moment for him. And yeah, like nobody in that locker room, nobody on that team is going to be harder on themselves in saying like I need to make those. Like I like we had sort of the we wanted to lure people in with the intro graphic there, like when I had to make the free throws tagline on there. Like nobody's gonna believe that thought though more than DG himself. Like he knows he has to make those, and that's what I think is ironic about it. Is like as much as you think you're being harsh to DG, I'm sure he's being just as tough on himself, and he's gonna work to correct it in the future. I do want to throw this comment on here from Freddie B. Shot blockers get dunked on, good shooters miss free throws. I think that's a good way to put it. Like sometimes it happens. It's rare, I mean, we've seen LeBron, the greatest, arguably the great. I don't want to get into that debate today.
Don't.
Arguably the greatest player of all time, get dunked on before. Like it's just how it goes in basketball. Like the longer you play, the more likely you are to mess something up. Every now and then, it's par for the course.
Yeah, and that's probably where I'll leave it with DG. He's going to come out angry in Philly, and then that he's going to be seeking retribution on Saturday night, as is the whole team against Houston.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and I think like you brought up some other key points of this game. I think like some of the big takeaways for me that stand out on a positive side, holding the Rockets to 15 points in the fourth quarter. I mean, that's huge. Gave you a chance to get back in that game and get the lead like they did late and give themselves an opportunity to win. That speaks to the defensive effort in the second half, which
the old zone, baby.
Yeah, which we've, they switched things up and it worked. And we've talked about, the second half defense at times being a little bit of a struggle at times. So that was encouraging. I also think too, like as you said, the backcourt kind of has to take this one on the nose or take this one on the chin. I think it's still kind of concerning that Donovan seems to still be in the slump. Like he'll have the little breakout performances, like the night he dropped like 35 or whatever it was. But I still think, there's something there where it just seems like his game's a little bit off right now. And that's okay. Like I'm sure he'll snap out of it. If there's anybody I trust to snap out of it, it's him. But yeah, like those are some of the bigger things that I sort of walk away, on top of the fact that you were missing two of your one very important key player in Evan Mobley and another important role player in Isaac Okoro last night as well.
Karis LeVert too. LeVert's missed the last two games. So like those are, I mean, Karis is pretty much their sixth man, other than Ty Jerome, which I'm sure we'll get into Ty Jerome. What a terrific stretch he's been having, and season really, but like right back to where he started off this year. I think with Donovan, I can't wait to ask him this on Saturday, because I asked Kenny about it. And if you've been watching on our YouTube channel, Kenny had a really good answer for this, but I asked him why Donovan's rim conversion rate was down by like 9-10%. And it's really, really interesting to hear Kenny talk about that, because Kenny was referring to reading the rim and making sure that you're attacking the right guys. But with the spacing that the Cavs have, there's no way that number should be on the lower end. So it was something he was going to go look into. So if the Cavs make some sort of adjustment where it gets Donovan cleaner looks at the rim, you can thank Spencer Davies. Just kidding. But no, that was actually Mikey Lucas.
No,
you should
take credit. You should take credit, in my opinion.
Mikey McNuggets over at Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. He's the one who really did a nice graphic on it. I was just somebody who was trying to relay the message and ask someone like Kenny, who loves to talk ball. But I thought that was an interesting answer about reading the rim and stuff like that, because I've noticed that Donovan has been driving into a lot of traffic and trying to finish through contact, and hasn't had as much success doing it. And sometimes it's like fading away from the basket. It's not getting close enough. When he does, he's usually finishing. He should be getting to the free throw line more than he has been. He's been in the corners more. His spots, obviously, on the three-point line, and doing a lot of step backs on the left wing that you've noticed that usually go down, and you saw him go down against, the Pacers the other night. And, he dropped 30 in another game too. So like, that's nothing that's been taken away really. But I see what people were saying on the the kind of physical aspect of it, but I don't think it's as big of a deal as people are making it out to be. And also, I think that his role has been so different this year, as we've been talking about, that he's trying to get back into I have to take over role, that it's kind of like a push and pull almost, because that's not something he's been used to doing all year long. Yeah,
and I do think Donovan deserves a lot of credit, because it takes a very unselfish player, let alone an unselfish star player, because I would say Donovan Mitchell's obviously in that star category. I mean, and honestly, I'll say the quick anecdote here. The reason I know Donovan Mitchell's now in the star category, if he wasn't before, at least in the eyes of some people, I was on, we use like the Amazon Fire TV sticks at home, Spence. And I went on to just go to like Hulu or whatever I use for television. And they always have like a big top graphic at the top of like stuff they're promoting. And the promotion was for the NBA. And the graphic had, I think it was LeBron, who was the other? I think somebody from the Celtics, maybe like Jason Tatum, and Donovan Mitchell was on there. And I was like, oh, look at that. The Cavaliers being featured on the graphic. They're finally getting some respect. And Donovan Mitchell being promoted as a star. So I think it does take, though, to get back to my original point, it does take a very unselfish type of star and player to, embrace the system that the Cavs are running that does take, that incorporates everybody and does take the ball out of his hands at times. And I think he deserves a lot of credit for that. I think, again, everything was going so well at the start of the season and for a large portion of the beginning of the season that I think it became a norm now. And so when things aren't working right or somebody's off a little bit, I think it's cause for people to panic. But we knew it wasn't going to be rainbows and butterflies forever. And so these are the natural growing pains that I think we thought were going to happen anyway. It's just that maybe they're happening a little bit later than we thought. So I'm okay with them having some of these things. It's about navigating them, how how Donovan sort of navigates, that role that role he's kind of in where he's got to push and pull a little bit like you allude to. It's about figuring out okay, how do we get through sort of a time of the year where we're slumping a little bit? And those are the things that I'm kind of looking for most notably.
Definitely. Do you want to kind of get into what I think is going to happen on Saturday? Not to look past the Philly 76ers, but this is clearly something that you're going to want to see a rematch of.
Yeah,
it sucks that it's going to
tell me.
It sucks that it's going to be in a road home back-to-back. By the way, they've got 2 road home back-to-backs within the next week, which I think is idiotic on the NBA's scheduling part. I know that everything can't be perfect when it comes to really the logistics of all that stuff, but 2 road home back-to-backs within a week is insane.
Yeah.
Especially when you're down in Miami and then you play Atlanta the next night in Cleveland. But
I will say this, though. The one thing that's nice about the Miami trip is that you don't have time for the South Beach flu to kick in because you're not really there long enough to do it. That was all. Didn't they play Miami on a back-to-back earlier this season too? So they didn't really have they still lost, but I just, that's maybe the one benefit to doing that is you don't get settled into Miami with the Temptations.
It was an afternoon game against Charlotte.
That's right.
Which they won, and then they played the next night and still lost because maybe because that was an afternoon game and they were able to get into South Beach and have a little bit of fun before that. Who knows?
The Temptations of South Beach. Oh,
the Temptations. Hey, ask anybody. Media, players, executives, fans.
I think any of us would be experiencing the South Beach flu down there. So yeah.
100%. But you have the road home back-to-back, so you're in Philly on Friday, then you get a rematch and another chance against these Rockets on Saturday. I think in this rematch, I'm interested to see how they approach Alperen Şengün because he was having his way. He was having his way in the paint and really moving the bodies of Jarrett Allen and Dean Wade when they were matched up on him. And a number of times, I don't want to come off sounding whiny. I hate that. But clear as day, he was using his elbows to create space. And literally right into the gut of Dean Wade, right into the gut of Jarrett Allen.
I think Tom S. was alluding to that, yeah.
I have no idea how he was allowed that free reign. Now, I don't blame Şengün for using that free reign because if they're not going to call it, then yeah, I'm going to keep on doing it. Jarrett responded in the second half, I thought, admirably by using his smarts to get Şengün off of his feet with pump fakes and using his footwork and different ways to get looks at the basket on his own when he got the ball on the block or if he got it on high handoffs. Jarrett did a really nice job of responding to that. I also thought that play after Şengün tied it up with like a minute left and he shoved Jarrett Allen and somehow they went to the review and didn't see that as unsportsmanlike. That's something that we'll look at the 2-minute report, even though it doesn't matter. Still be funny to look at. Those were really highly intense plays, and how he ended up only with 3 fouls is still beyond me. That said, the Cavs are going to have to crash a lot better when they play defense. So they played really solid and guarded well with what they had against these athletic wings, which when you go down the Rockets roster, they're chock full of them. Amen Thompson, you got Jalen Green, Cam Whitmore, Tari Eason. I'd even throw Jayshawn Tate in there. Like, these guys are fast, they're powerful, strong, but this hasn't stopped the Cavs in the past. They've played teams like this, as we've mentioned before. They didn't go halfway through the season not playing guys that were strong, athletic, long. So they need to be better at boxing out after playing good defense, and they have to do a lot better on that. But they also got killed on the glass by Şengün and Steven Adams coming off the bench, who really gave them a tough time because these are some bruiser guys. And Tristan tried his damnedest to do his best, but this is where trying maybe to look at finding a third big who's a little bit bulkier, a little bit more stature-wise matches up with guys like that in the case of a matchup that happens. Because Adams is like a dying breed in the NBA. Like, there's only a handful of teams that have guys like that. But in the case that you face one of those in the postseason, you're going to want to look at that. I think that's more of a need than finding an athletic wing or finding another wing that can shoot, because these guys can shoot the lights out. They're fast. They don't necessarily need that on the offensive end. And on the defensive end, they have plenty in the tool bag, whether it's switching, whether it's going into shell coverage, or whether it's going to that zone to really match up against guys.
You mentioned obviously the rematch coming down the pike here. We talked about the schedule sort of quirk here. And we also hit on Donovan Mitchell's struggles of late a little bit, kind of it seems like he's in a slump. I think it's also worth sort of pivoting to the fact that this team is dealing with, I think it's not just like Donovan who seems to be slumping. Some of the role players that were key in the hot start this team got off to continue to sort of have their fair share of struggles. Like last night, for example, Sam Merrill, 1 of 6 from 3. That's what he's on this team to do, is knock down 3-pointers. He hasn't been doing that at a very efficient clip of late. Dean Wade struggling to shoot the ball. Still, both those guys, by the way, still playing really, really good defense, so they're contributing to the team. But they need to be able to help on the offensive end, especially if Kenny Atkinson is going to talk himself into still trying to go as deep into his lineup as he can come postseason time. Those guys got to sort of cement their roles on this team. And it's something else. I'll throw this up there again. Tom S., who we appreciate, Tom, always jumping in and tuning into the podcast. He mentions Merrill needs to relax. He's a really good defender now. That's taking effort. So yeah, like, I don't know if he's like over exuding himself on one end, or like where is that from, like his head, like, mentally. But between those two, between Isaac Okoro, who's been slumping, and by the way, like Isaac Okoro, I wonder how much this shoulder injury really is just contributing to him, because he was shooting the best of his career, nearly 40% from 3, playing really good ball. We felt pretty good about where he was at this year in terms of his role and where he was contributing. And ever since that shoulder injury, it just seems like something's been off, which is why he's obviously missed the last couple games with the injury. Seems like they're trying to let him kind of get back healthy because they realize that it's a problem. But like, these are all things that I worry about, Spence, with the trade deadline approaching, that make me wonder how much more inclined the team is going to be to make a move if those things continue. Because again, the role players, like the starting 4 guys, are the keys to this whole thing. Yes. But the role players making their presence felt and contributing in this very free-flowing offense is why the Cavs got off to the hot start they did. It's when they're at their best, those guys are doing their thing. And if you lose that element, I wonder if they almost feel like they got to add something to get a spark going into the second half.
Well, with Isaac in particular, it just sucks. It sucks because anytime he gets any sort of positive momentum and he's in a groove, something happens.
Yeah.
It feels like it's been his entire career in Cleveland, to be honest. This one, right shoulder, you take a screen from Ben Simmons. It's the shooting arm. And we talked about this on last week's podcast, but Kenny pretty much made it clear that it's still not 100%. And that's something that you have to consider when deciding whether or not you keep a guy out. And maybe he came back a little too early because the shot was not the same. He's still defending well. He's still passing well and all that good stuff, but the shot isn't there. And if you're a negative on the offensive end and can't contribute shots out of your 5-6 attempts that you get, then you're going to have to sit because the other guys are going to be depending on you to make those shots. So Isaac's just kind of caught between a rock and a hard place on this one, especially when you look at how well, the other guys have played to this point. Karis LeVert, who's been out, obviously, with the wrist injury. Hopefully that's nothing, too crazy. He was questionable yesterday, but just didn't end up playing. You've been without Evan Mobley. Evan Mobley's a big part of, the team too. So Injuries, kind of big deal here, but like 2 legitimate rotational players and then 1 rotational player, like that's obviously going to have an effect on the team, but they've overcome it. They stomped out the Suns on Monday. I know they haven't been playing well, but they stomped them out. I don't think with Isaac in particular, it's tough. It's tough, man. There is a chance that he probably could be ended up used in a deal if they went that route. But this goes back again to the power of friendship conversation. His locker room's right next to Donovan. It's right next to DG. They love him. He's, not paid out the window. He's obviously a really good defender that you use in the playoffs in that situation. Can he get the shot back? That's the big question. I mean, and then you look at how, I don't want to say redundant because that just sounds kind of negative, but like similar sized and similar styles and statures of like a Sam Merrill and a Max Strus and a Ty Jerome, who they've mixed in all at the 3, or if they've been in 3-guard lineups with Mitchell and Garland, and they've also been on the floor with one or the other. Like Ty Jerome closed the game out last night at the 3, which I loved, by the way, because he was outstanding against Houston, and it was the reason that the Cavs were able to kind of get back and stay afloat in that game. But a lot of these guys are similar sized, and it's not easy to find who's going to be that 5th guy in that lineup, and that's why it's matchup based for Kenny right now. Dean Wade is playing starting 3, starting 4. He's also your backup 5 in pinches. Tristan's been playing the last couple of games by necessity, but again, I think that if you find a deal for like a vet big or more athletic, bulkier big that you could rely on in case just for depth's sake, I think that would make sense. And, on paper, just having a lot of guard/forwards.
Well, and it's interesting because like I've been saying, I want to see this team. I'm not rooting for them, but you want to see this team come through some adversity. Like you want to see how they handle that. So it's not that I think like, the sky, again, I'm not trying to make it sound like the sky is falling and like trade everybody and whatever. Like that's not where I'm at, but like how they come through this in the next week or so, because the trade deadline is fast approaching. We got a little over, it's February 5th. So we got a little over like, I don't know, what is it, like 10 days or so here until it's going to sort of hit. Like how they look in this stretch of games. And I know it's a tough stretch because you mentioned the schedule that they have. Like that's going to be, I think it could dictate what they decide to do. Because to your point, like, if they're not sure Isaac Okoro is going to be effective or he's not going to be able to get that shot back, maybe you do have to flip it for something and try to like improve the team. Because again, you do have to sort of thread the needle on like maximizing this opportunity that you have in front of you with a really good team, while also, trying not to ruffle feathers. And I've talked about this, Spence, on other platforms. Not that they're immune to it, but I do kind of feel like this locker room is such a good group of guys with really good morale that unless they did something outrageous, like traded, Darius Garland or Jared Allen or something like a crazy trade like that, I think generally like Donovan Mitchell sets the tone for that group, and he would – be accepting of and understanding of the fact that like they're trying to improve the team in some way, and they would largely accept whoever they acquire, if they acquire anybody, and that it would be it'd be fine. Like you want to be careful. I'm not saying like go trade for Bradley Beal or Jimmy Butler, who could like really ruffle feathers and cause problems, obviously, and like mess up the dynamics. But if you're adding a couple role players or a couple pieces that are going to contribute, I do think this locker room is sort of built to navigate those things and accept people. And it's just a good group of dudes, like all around. So I've thought about it more and more, and I don't know that I'm so worried about the chemistry being off. I guess it would depend on who you got. If you got some locker room cancer, of course. But yeah, like I think if they get to a point where they're like, we're just not coming through this slump, and some of these guys that we thought were going to be able to contribute at a higher level just aren't there right now, maybe we need to make a move. I could understand why they would do that.
Yeah, I mean, and it's marginal stuff, right? Like, I see people floating around Duop Reith over in Portland as one of those names, right? Like you look at any of those kind of guys on the margin.
Oren Smith wants to know if Drummond is available, because you were talking about getting another big.
Now that actually would be a pretty okay fit, I would say, to throw in a pinch. But I don't know what's going on in Philly and what they would want back or whatever that is. And thinking about what the Cavs have to offer too. Like, I don't know. I'd have to go and actually research that stuff.
Yeah. We also got
more.
Brandon throwing out the obvious, the Cam Johnson trade, which that's been obviously rumored. We talked about it on the last episode, obviously.
Yeah, you remember? Sorry, I have to read. I don't have my glasses. Hey, they should go after Cam Johnson and give up a little bit of the future. What is a little bit of the future in those eyes? Is my question.
Probably the 2031 pick.
Okay.
Probably Jalen Tyson.
Jalen
is part
Tyson?
of that. Yeah, I would imagine.
Here's my counter argument. Okay. Jalen Tyson in this new CBA, by the way, which is really tough to navigate and why you don't see as many trades as we've seen in the past. Jalen Tyson is a cost-controllable contract on a rookie deal, and he's probably going to be a rotational player by next year. Are you willing to give that up for Cam Johnson, who is coming in also with more money that you're going to have to pay with Cam? You're probably going to be over that first apron. And not to mention something that I was listening to Bobby Marks on Kevin O'Connor's podcast the other day. Cam Johnson comes with a $4.5 million bonus against the apron. So thinking about that, is Cam Johnson really going to fix everything? Is Cam Johnson going to fix the fact that Darius Garland missed two free throws last? Like that's what I'm thinking. Like when you look at the games and how they've lost, they legitimately lost to the Hawks. I'm not gonna that was those were losses. Boston, tough one on the road. Everyone loses to Boston.
Yeah, you
lost last night in Houston because you didn't make free throws.
Yeah,
there's overlying problem about athletic wing this, athletic wing that. I just don't see it. I think it's more of their execution, which they've taken care of the ball really well this year, despite the paces that they're playing at, and they're defending pretty damn well still.
Yeah, I do think the Cam Johnson thing makes sense, though, and I understand why people go there because it's kind of that big picture thought of like, okay, you're in a 7-game series with the Celtics, like you could use a wing like that against them. So I get where that comes from. I'm certainly not begrudging people who feel like Cam Johnson would be a move that this team should make. I get why they've been linked to him. It does add up. It makes some sense. That doesn't mean they're going to be able to pull it off. They got to have the assets to do it. The cap part of this you bring up with Jalen Tyson is interesting. And I do think that's where like the Cavs are going to have to weigh along the lines of what we're talking about with the role players who are kind of in a little bit of a slump right now. They're going to have to sort of weigh like, all right, it's balancing planning for the future with going for it right now, and where they're at in that process. I don't envy Kobe Altman to have to be the one to make those decisions, but that's kind of where they're going to have to. So as we get to the deadline, that's going to be the conversation that they have to have and see if they have the assets to even pull something like that off, which is the other biggest part of this. Because even if we have ideas in our heads of like, we'll trade Jalen Tyson in the 2031 pick and this guy, sometimes somebody swoops in and they're like, well, we'll give Brooklyn 3 first-rounders for Cam Johnson. And then you're just kind of, SOL.
Yeah, you're outbid a lot of other, who has really good assets to get Cam Johnson if they really want to? OKC. Is OKC thinking about breaking up their locker room? I don't know. Like that's the thing. Like I think Cam Johnson is a move for like a second tier team to try to get to that first tier. I think the Cavaliers are a first tier team. And that's why I have the position that I have.
Yeah.
I think that fair. OKC is a first tier team. I think that Boston obviously is a first tier team. That's how my thinking is going right now.
I get it. Yeah.
Which is why I wouldn't touch it.
I am intrigued by improving the team. I am.
And don't forget about the buyout market too.
Yeah, but I want to see how this next week or so goes and if these guys can kind of snap out of it before I rule on that. And I'm sure that's what the Cavs are going to use that time period for as well. I think that's a good play. Go ahead.
No, the comment section's hot today, bro. We should look at some of these. Look at this. This is awesome.
Yeah,
Thanks
there
for
are
the
a lot of people jumping
guys.
in. We'll get to. We did Brandon's comment. JB Smooth, my guy. With Mobley able to play the stretch 4, another big is crucial if you can't get the wing you want. Yeah, yes. I mean that adds to Spence's point on you could use another guy because if you're pulling Mobley out of the paint, that's going to be huge. And Mobley, as we've seen, obviously trying to expand his role a little bit from outside. Jeremy Grant getting thrown out there. The two names Jeremy Grant and Cam Johnson have been the two get these guys in the Cavs names.
People are desperate for 6'8", 6'9" guys.
Those are the dudes that have been linked to the Cavs for I feel like 7 years now. It's
which is understandable. I get it. I know you want your traditional small forward. I get it.
Yeah.
But you know who your wing is? Your wing is Evan Mobley. That's who your stretch for your 3/4 is Evan Mobley. Like that's how I see it. And Dean Wade. But I get you don't want to have to trust Dean Wade in that situation in the playoffs. I totally get that.
Yeah.
Because you haven't seen it yet.
And that's the key thing is we haven't seen it yet to trust him. If he can prove it, then that's a different story. And we'll end with this one. We don't need more names, just strength, athleticism, and durability. We can find some in free agency, in my opinion. Yeah, listen, like the buyout market could be an option. Maybe they make a smaller ancillary trade to sort of bolster this roster. I'm starting to feel like, and here's maybe where I'll leave this part of it. I'm starting to feel like they will make some move. Whether or not it's for the big names that were getting thrown out there, Cam Johnson, etc., remains to be seen. But I think they will make some move to sort of supplement the roster. And it might be at the spot you mentioned, Spence, of just kind of having a backup big out there to sort of help with the depth that they maybe lack at that position. And I think that'd be okay. Like I trust, even if there's the slumps are still kind of going on, I'm okay. I want to see them go for it, yes. But I'm okay with them sort of seeing this thing through and making some smaller moves to help the roster if they think that's in the name of like staying in the championship conversation. And they've earned the right, I think, to do that. So,
yeah, I think so too. And here, just like another food for thought, like the Celtics won the championship last year. Obviously, their 3-point percentage was out of this world. Jaylen Brown was their starting 3.
Yeah.
Just letting you know, like it's not like they are littered with a bunch of athletic wings. They have really 2 amazing perimeter defenders up top with Derek White and Drew Holiday. And that, like, not every that's what God, you get me on a tangent every time I talk to you about this stuff. Not every team is supposed to be like each other. Everyone is supposed to have their own identity.
Yeah.
It's not like you can have a blueprint, but not every team is going to be the same. The Cavs are not going to be like the Celtics, who are not going to be like the Magic, who are not going to be like the Bucks. Not every team is designed to be the same way. I understand it's a copycat league, but play to your strengths. Don't worry about your weaknesses. And that's what Kenny Atkinson said in the past. And that's my answer to you for that stuff. I don't think that athletic wing is as big of a need as a third big to make sure that when you play those beefier guys and beefier teams that you have someone in the paint to be able to get you boards. Beefy.
I love that word, beefy. Yeah.
These comments, man, I'm not gonna lie. I am appreciative that you guys are hopping in and having the conversation with us. That is really cool.
We appreciate the comments. Yeah. We appreciate those of you who like, follow, subscribe to the podcast, wherever you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify, maybe somewhere else. We encourage you to continue listening to Courtside with the Cavaliers on SI, where you can find more of our conversations on this team throughout the season. We'll have another episode for you. Obviously, I think we are going to be able to get back on track next week to have like an early in the week one. So that's the goal here. So we hope to do that. You'll also probably hear from us post game for these games coming up, or at least you're out Friday. But
I'm out Friday because I work, but Saturday night we will be at Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse.
So we'll make it happen. But as always, I encourage you to head on over to the Cleveland Cavaliers on SI YouTube channel, where you can find more content like this, from the podcast episodes to post-game press conferences to our post-game recaps and more. And also head on over to Cleveland Cavaliers on SI, our website, with all kinds of written content about the team as we keep tabs on your favorite basketball team throughout the entire season. Thanks for stopping on by. Spence and I will be back very, very soon. Take it easy, Cleveland, and enjoy a back-to-back with your Cleveland Cavaliers.